Hi everyone, it's Sam, NFTstatistics with your proof daily NFT countdown. Lot to talk about today. We had the Super Bowl, we had the checks burn start, a couple other things. We'll start with a quick market overview. Volumes were down a lot over the weekend. If you look kind of at where we are now relative to the past, we haven't been this low since before Blur Airdrop 3 began, and even then we were higher than current levels. So pretty slow on the volume front. A lot of that's because Blur volume is really down substantially. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. We know there's been a lot of airdrop farming there, so removal of that back towards more organic volume is probably a good thing. Volumes were the least of the problems, though. Floor prices really took a big hit. Large cap index down over 4% over the past few days. Weakness in Moonbirds, Doodles, Cool Cats, a little strength in Gutter, but broadly speaking, pretty much everything was down this weekend. Mid caps, pretty much flat, down about 1%. The reason that they weren't down as much is because A Kid Called Beast had a very strong weekend, up 26%, but there was serious weakness in Chimpers, Degen Tunes, and Sappy Seals. In terms of art blocks and art projects, again, Life in West America did the most volume, was kind of sitting pretty stable at 2.5 to 3 ETH, and over the past 24 hours just pumped again up to about a 6 ETH floor. In terms of which collections were strong, I mentioned A Kid Called Beast. You can see this chart, very promising right now. Life in West America also, the red dot is where the median trades were, from 2.5 to 5 just over the past 24 hours. Porsche, who knows what's going on there, but Porsche just kind of, ever since they lowered the supply, has been pretty strong. Recently, the floor has gone from about 1.8 to 2.5. And then the other collection that keeps going up step by step, love him or hate him, the charts are the charts. This just keeps rising. The Trump digital trading cards. I think what's happening here is people are thinking he could get back on Twitter. And if he does, perhaps he'll say something about these cards, get more visibility, and buying ahead of that possibility. Next story, and I think the main story of the weekend, is the Super Bowl ad by DigiDaigaku, pulling this headline here from Decrypt. It said the Super Bowl ad baffles viewers, but the free NFTs are selling for $700. So I think that kind of tells the story. The mint went through. There was a little bit of confusion. The ad started with this image of a DigiDaigaku and basically pretty quickly gave you a QR code that you could scan. And if you scan that, and if you were lucky, if you're in one of the 5,000 people who got to mint potentially, you went to this screen that said mint now. Now, if you did not have MetaMask on your phone, you first had to set up a wallet, add the seed phrases. So it was a pretty clunky experience for people who aren't in the space. If you were not in that 4,000 to 5,000, you were taken to Gabriel Layden's Twitter page, and asked to follow Gabriel Layden. I think they believed that putting a human face behind it was better than a product face. A lot of people got this, something went wrong because so many people were going there at once. Now, if you look at the owners of this collection, who owns the Dragons collection? And again, it was the Dragons collection that they had 10,000 of. 5,000 of them were held by one wallet, and that is the DigiDaigaku wallet. So only 5,000 were minted out to the public. They said another, and DigiDaigaku always does this, these all caps, mint now, retweet us, follow us. They did another one of those, where they're where they're allegedly going to give out the next 5,000, which they claim are the most rare. Now, I wanted to dig a little bit into how this mint went, if the goals were achieved. And one thing that jumped out at me is that of the dragons that were minted, something like 70% of them were minted by people who had already bought NFTs or minted NFTs with that wallet. Now, I would imagine that an even higher percentage are people who have bought or minted NFTs, because most experienced people in this space would have created a burner wallet or a separate wallet so that they didn't have to interact with a contract with a wallet that has a lot of their NFTs. So I think broadly speaking, the vast majority of the people who got involved in this mint or who were able to mint were already in the space. I don't think there were a ton of new people onboarded. Now, if you look at how the NFTs for DigiDaigaku responded, the Genesis DigiDaigaku, was trading at something like 10 ETH before the commercial. Afterwards, it really took a bit of a hit. The floor, the trade started to go through around 8 ETH. A lot of WETH bids were accepted. In terms of how the Dragons traded, started up at that 0.4 ETH range and have kind of been bouncing around between 0.25 and 0.4 ETH. So you can see here kind of where the trades have been hitting the tape so far. In terms of my view on this, what's my take? One, I thought it was interesting that Gabe Layden's Twitter was the focal point as opposed to the company. And I don't even know if a Twitter account was the best focal point for the hundreds of thousands or millions of people who did not get taken to the mint page. I think something that explained the NFT better, that wasn't like an all caps, retweet me, follow me message. I think something that actually would have said, this is what's happening here. The 4,000 people who got lucky are making this free money. It would have been at least a little bit, I think, more instructive and help build the project and make people more aware. Secondly, is Gabe always talks about how important it is that everything be given away for free. I think that what's most important a lot of times is that it be frictionless, and that it be easy. I think that's almost more important. Paying creates a lot of friction for people. But if the minting process for a free NFT, where you have to create the wallet and get your seed phrases out there, I think if it still has a lot of friction, I don't think it really achieves that benefit of just being simple. I think what happened here was a lot of degens who really understand the airdrop game, just got these NFTs, made a few $100s from it. The third thing I say there is that $200 million is a lot of money. What I mean by that is that Gabe Layden has raised $200 million for his company. So, on the back of $200 million, you can experiment like this. And I think that that's why this, whether it went well or poorly, either way, he's getting more attention. He probably spent $5 to $10 million on the ad. I'm not sure the exact number, but out of a $200 million fundraise, it's not a terribly huge number. And then the fourth thing I said here is, were the goals achieved? I think the goals they said were to onboard new users. I don't think that really happened. The vast majority, only 4,000 to 5,000 were minted. The vast majority of those were already existing players in the space. The second goal was for a lot of people to be talking about how DigiDaigaku gave away all this free money. And I'm not sure that happened either. When I look up the news, I see an article in a couple crypto publications, but the mainstream media really wasn't talking about this. So I'm not sure we really got this huge influx of new users, people who are intrigued by free NFTs or whatever. I just think if that were the case, I'd be getting more phone calls from my family about this. We'd be seeing more articles on news sites saying this is what happened. So I don't know, that's just my take. Gabe did take a victory lap after, said that the website didn't crash, we didn't get hacked, ETH worked, there wasn't really a gas war, there wasn't really a botting situation. All that seems true, and talked about how next step for him is owners being able to get royalties, which he's talked about with his royalty solution. Third story, the check burn begins. Now, this is something we've talked about forever. It's been on the map. Sunday was the day where you can burn your checks into a unique one of one, into 40 checks, 20 checks, 5, 4, 1, etc. Here are different examples of ones that have been minted so far, going from 80 all the way down to just one check. If you look at, there's still, 10,000 still have not been burned. So the majority of the open editions have not been burned into the 80 on-chain version. The ones that have not been burned, you can see, are trading at a premium. They're at 0.95 ETH, whereas the ones that have been burned are at 0.81 ETH. I talk about a gambler's premium, which is the idea that you might be able to mint one that has a rarity to it that makes it worth more. So I think that that's what you're seeing here. If you look at what are the rare ones that are trading at higher prices, on the left here is monochrome, so just one color that has a 4.04 ETH floor. And these gradients, I think, are really appealing, really cool. These different gradients are trading at higher floor prices as well. Those are really rare, but you can get those, which kind of put the unminted at a bit of a premium. In terms of the overall checks project, the floor really has tumbled. We were at 2.5 just a week ago. Right now, we're down around 1 ETH. And I think that this is just a classic example of buy the rumor, sell the news. Anticipation is oxygen in NFTs. Everyone was saying, just wait till the mint, just wait till the mint. Then the mint happens and people don't know what they're waiting for now. There's nothing in the future that's going to pump the price. And I think we're seeing that as a result, the price is going down, the participants are playing, but the speculators are saying, okay, I have nothing else to wait for, and they're leaving the project. The last thing I'll say is if you look at what the floor prices are on the different versions, so the open edition, the 80 check, 40, 20, 10, etc., you can see that they're going up. And broadly speaking, those floors are pricing in a lot more than if you were to create it yourself. For example, 5 checks, is at 40 ETH. If you just were to buy the checks yourself and then burn them into a 5 check, it would only cost 12.96 ETH. So a bit of a premium. Again, floor prices are not indications of where the transactions are happening, and you can see that here. Fourth story is that Vincent Van Dough provides utility. Quick reminder, he did this Pepe check project, raised $1.6 million, sold over 237,000 of them. Didn't really promise any utility, but in the end, he says that there will be utility, and he's introducing a project called Notable Pepes. Basically, that the Pepe checks are your access pass So if you buy the 237,000, those are your access pass, and they give you a raffle spot for allow list for future drops that will happen in this Pepe card theme. Very similar, I think, in spirit to what 6529 is doing with his meme cards. Vincent Van Doe says that every Sunday, 5 new cards are going to drop, and there will be anywhere from 100 to 1,000. But to get one, you're going to have to pay 0.069 ETH, and you're going to have to get on the allow list versus the other 237,000 cards. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, how hot it gets. I mean, they're basically, from those numbers, they're saying they're going to raise another 34.5 to 345 ETH per week, of course, depending on if they end up doing, if they end up doing 100 or 1,000 supply per card. But very curious to see how this plays out. A lot of the open edition or the meme card theme has kind of come off a little bit, so we'll see how this one goes. In terms of the price, on the announcement, you saw some of these cards go to 0.015 ETH for the open edition of the Pepes, and now, or the Pepe checks, it's now kind of settled right back to where most of the trades have been in that 0.009, 0.01 ETH range. Last thing, want to talk about 4 notable sales. The first is this triple water Azuki, which sold for 130 ETH. We know that spirits sell for 130 ETH, but interesting to see that this water NFT did as well. Why is it a triple water? Because they have the water orb in their hand, the water hair, and then the water in the background. So that just is what makes this one super unique. A couple of the other traits have this triple feature. There are 2 fires as well, but pretty cool to see that sale. This Pudgy penguin sold for 28 ETH. It's a Pudgy Man Pudgy penguin. So I looked at it and I said, why is this trading at such a premium? And then I looked at Pudgy Man Floor, this trait, and you have some of those at 16.33 ETH. So the floor for this trade is much lower than where the sale was. The buyer was EB7. I asked him, why'd you pay up for this NFT? And the reason, if you look closely, is that this one is part of the Pudgy penguin, the plushy Pudgy, their toy series that they're launching in toys around, I believe, America, maybe the world. But only a few of those NFTs are actually licensed to earn royalties from the toys. If you look here, you can see that this Pudgy Man was one of them. So that's what commanded the premium for that NFT. Third sale is this Skulls of Luci by Sam Spratt, which sold for 65 ETH. You might not be familiar with this collection. To be honest, I wasn't super familiar with it, but I did some digging, and you can see that there are only 50 of these NFTs, and they're really owned by a lot of the who's who of NFTs. Cosimo, Ferocious, Vincent Van Doe owns one, and a few other people, own these NFTs. Now, Sam Spratt is an artist. He's done work for Marvel. He's done work for all sorts of other corporates. Really a very successful artist who also has, one of one NFTs selling on Super Rare. You can see one sold as high as 115 ETH. A few other sales at 50 ETH or higher. And he launched this collection as the only non-one of one, the Skull collection, the one that was purchased, as the only non-one of one collection he has. There are only 50 of them. He gave them to people who bid earlier on his artwork. And through that, he claims that there are plans for this group. I think this is a really exclusive insider group with conversations and other things. So that explains why it went for 65 ETH. Congrats to the seller, congrats to the buyer, as well as to Sam. Cool to see. And I just wanted to, there were a few super rare pieces. So for the last one, I just wanted to highlight one that sold for 5 ETH. There were a few that sold for 5 ETH, nothing for more than that on super rare over the past 3 days. This piece is called Cross Courts by RichCaldwell. I just did a little digging. He said sales, which have sold for 3 to 4 ETH. I like to do drone photography. I really think drone photography that looks straight down is really kind of interesting. And he's done a ton of work like that. So RichCaldwell, his work kind of jumped out at me. Cool little sale here for 5 ETH on this piece above these tennis courts. But check out his work. It's pretty interesting to look at. So congrats to him, the buyer, and everyone involved. That's all for me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did like it below. Tell us what we can do better in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. And if you really like it, tweet about the show. Tell your friends in Discord. That's what helps us grow the viewership, keeps us motivated to keep going. Appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow and every weekday. Have a good day.